Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth day of the vision focus. So, this week we've looked at vision, thinking about animals, also vision and reading in general, and kind of focused on kind of young people and reading. And then there was also reading and computer sensors. So, today we'll be looking deeper into reading, or not reading, but vision related to different artworks in different museums and places to go. So there's supposed to be some places off the beaten path that come up here. So I'm thinking that we should end up with a pretty interesting itinerary. This book is not really focusing on the more literal sense of vision. So look at the list. All right, so Raw Vision source book. Visionary environments might be where we go. Galleries, art fairs and auctions, museums and collections, publications, organizations and services, websites, Raw Vision Index. So, introduction. Welcome to the first edition of the Raw Vision Outsider Art Sourcebook, which acts as a comprehensive guide through the fascinating world of outsider art, contemporary folk art, and visionary art. This edition concentrates on the historical aspects of outsider art, while future editions will reflect the broad field of outsider art today. In the first section, we attempt to give an impression of the theoretical background to outsider art and debunk its concept of the negative effects of culture versus the pure creation of art breadth. We then pass on to a chronology of events that have shaped the world of outsider art as it became increasingly well known and international in scope. The bibliography contains every work mentioned in the various reference sections of the sourcebook, as well as all major books on the subject. With our 50 classic outsiders, we introduce the greatest outsider artists of the last century. Many of these creators are represented in important collections, museums, and books, and are in all senses classic. Their work lays the basis for a real understanding of outsider art. Visionary environments are in many ways the most sensational aspect of outsider art. There are few professional artists who would spend their lives creating something that could never be sold or exhibited. We have tried to give a good geographical spread of these unique creations, and in future editions will present a full international listing. Their existence depends very much on local support and interest, and there are still parts of the world where our knowledge of outsider art is limited. Our listings pages will guide readers directly to museums and galleries where outsider art can be seen and experienced. Many of the museums listed are specialist collections, as there are still few general contemporary art institutions that include outsider art. There has been an explosion of interest on the internet, and this is reflected in the many websites in our list that provide information on different aspects of the subject. Finally, we have the index for the first 40 issues of Raw Vision, which since 1989 has established itself as the leading international publication, and in 1998 was awarded the UNESCO Prize for the world's best art magazine. We hope very much that this guide will interest, fascinate, and inspire, and lead our readers to make their own journeys and find their own discoveries. with grateful thanks to all those who have helped in its production and given their support to this project. All right, John Maisels. All right, true art always appears where we don't expect it, where nobody thinks of it or utters its name. Art detests being recognized and greeted by its own name. It immediately flees. Art is a character infatuated by the incognito. Okay, this point of view is pretty strong. So notice Campaign de l'Arc the Campaign de l'Arc is a nonpartisan and non-commercial association established in Paris. The founders are Messieurs André Breton, John de Beaufort, John Paulin, Charles Breton, Henri Pierre Roche, and Michel Tapier. Michel Tapier. Right, so we're looking for works of art such as paintings, drawings, statues, statuettes, objects of all kinds that owe nothing or as little as possible to the imitation of works or art on display in museums, exhibitions, and galleries. On the contrary, they should draw upon the basic human experience and the most spontaneous personal invention. They should be creations that their creator has produced from his own psyche, through his own invention and means of expression. Oh, by the way, also today is International Poetry Day. I did not go out and read poetry, but it's not too late to read some poetry aloud. I might just put my speaker in the window and read like I did the other day. But International Poetry Day, and I think this type of way of collecting art kind of touches on the spirit of poetry, right? More about the psyche of the artist himself or herself than expectations of. Okay. International Poetry Day. Without resorting to the standard accepted resources and without reference to current convention. Works of this kind interest us even if they are crude and clumsily executed. We do not set great store by manual dexterity. Most of the time, it is used to imitate works created by others and disguises the creator instead of expressing himself through it. Just as calligraphy disguises handwriting, we seek works in which the faculties of invention and creation that we believe to exist in every human being, at least at times, are manifested in a very immediate manner without masks and without constraints. Point of view. Conventional art that is pompously displayed in exhibition halls and galleries and that manages to get itself seen by the largest number of people as if it alone were worthy of the name of art to the exclusion of any other kind appears to us to have a very meager content, reduced to external workings and imitations. Is this simp? Do we have simp right here? No. Eternal, unchanging, everlasting. Oh, like Semper Fi. I don't know. Maybe not. Everlasting. Oh. which individual creativity is almost entirely lacking. We hold it to be a parasitic substitute that apes artistic creation without adding anything thereto, substituting arbitrary aphorisms and pointless theoretical systems for true art. We believe that the day is nigh, if it is not here already, when the public will manifest ample disdain for the flashy professional artists with their pseudo art critics and dealers. It will realize the vacuity of the works of these daubers, the crassness of the commercial activity that they engender, the aberration of the commentaries with which they surround themselves, and how little the true function of art has to do with all of this. True art, we believe, lies elsewhere. Strong points to make. All right, the home of art. Brut Monsieur Randron was kind enough to make available to us 2 basement rooms in his gallery in Paris, where in November 1947 we kept our home open to the public throughout last winter and spring. We have just moved to a spacious pavilion that Monsieur Gaston Gallimard has been kind enough to lend us, which stands at the bottom of the Garden of Editions Gallimard, 17 Rue de l'Université in Paris. These new premises were opened to the public on the 7th of September 1948. At present, they are hosting a group of exhibition of 100 or so works by different artists, most of whom are people who are unknown or anonymous and whose work offers a general idea of our taste. The first exhibition will very soon be followed by the presentation of the works of the late Adolf Wolfe, following which there will be an uninterrupted series of exhibitions. Prospection. The works that interest us have almost always been created by very isolated individuals whose activity is only known to their closest circle. We are therefore in great need of assistance in our researches, and we would be extremely grateful to people who, if they are aware of any of such unknown creators that we want to contact, put us in touch with them. An appeal to psychiatrists. Among the most interesting works we have encountered are some that were produced by people who are considered to be mentally ill and are detained in psychiatric hospitals. Naturally, people deprived of an occupation and pleasure show themselves, like prisoners, to be more inclined than others to make their own enjoyment through artistic activity. The preconceptions that people generally have of mental health and madness seem to us to be often based on very arbitrary distinctions. The reasons why a man may be considered unsuitable for participation in social life are of an order that we do not accept. We consequently believe that the works of creators considered to be sane and those considered to be ill should be judged just with the same view without creating special categories for them. We ask doctors and directors of psychiatric hospitals to help us in our search by informing us of works produced by people who are being treated by their services, which, when such works appear to them to be the sort of creation we are looking for, and by sending us, if possible, the original of such works or photographs of the original. As groundwater seeps to the surface and flows toward the stream in many rivulets, many expressive impulses run many creative paths into the great stream of art. Neither historically nor according to psychological theory does there exist a beginning point. Instead, there are many springs which finally transcend all life. I am not afraid to put forward the idea, paradoxically only at first sight, that the art of those who are nowadays classified as the mentally ill constitutes a reservoir of moral health. Indeed, it eludes all that tends to falsify its message, and which is of the order of external influences, calculations, success or disappointment in the social sphere. Here, the mechanisms of artistic creation are freed of all impediment by the way of an overwhelming dialectical reaction. The fact of internment and the renunciation of all profits as of all vanities, despite the individual suffering, this may entail emerge here as guarantees of that total authenticity which is lacking in all other quarters and for which we thirst more and more each day. In his Psychology of Conceptions of the World, Jaspers repeatedly emphasizes the fact that new life may emerge from despair, that new strengths may develop after a crisis, and that new forms may emerge from chaos. Wolfe has truly passed through such a crisis. The instinctual energy of the first stage now gave way little by little to something new. This new element no longer showed itself in a disorderly chance fashion, but took a very defined form. It was not an occupation which he found, but an activity which he created in the solitude of his cell, and which took on all the value of authentic work. It is precisely thanks to this work that he has, to some degree, freed himself. We understand by this term art works produced by persons unscathed by artistic culture, where mimicry plays little or no part, contrary to the activities of intellectuals. These artists derive everything, subjects, choice of materials, means of transposition, rhythm, styles of writing, etc., from their own depths and not from the conventions of classical or fashionable art. We are witness here to a completely pure artistic operation, raw, but entirely reinvented in all of its phases solely by means of the artist's own impulses. It is thus an art which manifests an unparalleled inventiveness, unlike cultural art with its chameleon and monkey-like aspects. But more than ever before, we are aware of the fact that the unconsciousness is the source of numinous images and symbols that possess the power to change us. The artist's most valuable possession is the ability to reach this realm and to emerge from the encounter intact. On the other hand, their knowledge of this inner world has taught us to respect and to value the experience and the contribution of those who do not or cannot emerge for their visions and the images in which they are embodied. Enable us to make contact with otherwise invisible aspects of the deepest layers of our own reality. I was not expecting that to keep going. Whether we call a person an artist or a madman matters little. In this century, the two terms have become interchangeable. What is essential is that the creative freedom of both is maintained and protected, that within our society a way is kept open for those unique and courageous individuals who, shunning the surface and the light, seek at the bidding of inner necessity to descend into the darkness in search of themselves. In our times, as in other times, certain ways of expression prevail. Through fashion or circumstances, certain forms of art receive attention and consideration to the exclusion of all others. Ultimately, these art forms are quite wrongly regarded as only justifiable ones, the only possible ones. Thus is hollowed out a path henceforth followed by all artists whose loose consciousness of its appeal, of its special character, and loose sight of many other admissible paths. So strong is the power of attraction of this narrow rut which forms the domain of cultural art that productions proceeding along other paths are not even perceived, as if a sort of ultrasonics. They are thrown into some condescending category like children's art, primitive art, or the art of the insane, all of which implies the quite false notion of maladroit or even aberrant stammerings as the beginning of a road leading to cultural art. Collection of L'Art began in 1945. Is comprised of works created by persons foreign to a cultural milieu and protected from its influences. The authors of these works have, for the most part, a rudimentary education, while in other cases, for example, through loss of memory or a discordant mental disposition, they have succeeded in freeing themselves from cultural magnetization and in rediscovering a fecund ingenuousness. Contrary to the classical idea, we believe that creative artistic forces, far from being the privilege of exceptional individuals, abound in everyone, but that they are commonly restrained, debased, or disguised due to worries about social conformity and difference to received myths. All right. Yeah, so let's just go to the chapter that we saw earlier and make the itinerary. So, visionary environments. 97. Page 97. Okay, page 97. Raw vision outside art, source book, visionary environments. Bon Liao Suryat, Wat Kek Buddha Park, Mong District, Nong Khai, Thailand. The Wat Kek Buddha Park in Thailand is being constructed by the visionary Bonleo Suryat, the leader of his own religious sect. Bonleo Suryat first created a Buddha park at Venetian Vientiane. I don't know. I don't know how to say that place, but in his native Laos, but had to abandon the site when the country was taken over by communist troops. The building of the Thai park began in 1977 on 16 acres of land specially purchased for the project. Wat Kek Buddha Park combines elements of Buddhist and Hindu symbolism with reference to native Thai and Chinese religions, huge concrete deities, including the Hindu gods Shiva, Vishnu, and Rama, stand alongside images of the Buddha himself. The site also features secular concrete figures in tableau depicting the evils of drink and gambling. A huge temple is being constructed on the site. Banlieue Suryat is helped by an army of over 100 devotees who shape the structures and temple complex according to their master's detailed instructions. I mean, this seems pretty cultural though, but we're talking about locations. Rock Garden in India. The Rock Garden is the world's largest visionary environment, a fantasy kingdom created by Nekchand Saini, originally built in secret in a clearing on the outskirts of the newly constructed city of Chandigarh. The site eventually gained official recognition and was inaugurated in 1976. Nestling amid acres of woodland, the garden resembles a small town with streets, archways, doorways, and country yards, populated by Chand's distinctive sculptures created from cement and waste materials. Like the modern city of Chandigarh, Chand has designed the rock garden in phases. Phase 1 evokes the calm of a traditional Punjabi village. The second phase is a large sculptural environment of nearly 2,000 figures, including kings and queens, women collecting water, children exercising, a wedding party, gods, goddesses, beggars, saints, and an animal kingdom. Chand later added a waterfall using a pumping station, along with bridges, gorges, passageways, and streams. The third phase of the garden is still being constructed. An even larger waterfall, an amphitheater, and a sneaking arcade with giant swings have already been added. Ferdinand Cheval, France. The Palais Ideal in Hautervez, France, is one of the best known of the outsider art environments. Ferdinand Cheval, 1836 1924, a postman in his local town, started to collect unusual and interesting stones during his rounds. Cheval taught himself missionary skills and began to shape concrete forms decorated with the objects he found during his daily collections. The monumental architectural structure which began to emerge amazed local people and Cheval's family. The palace includes winding stairs, turrets, and ornamental columns. The Guada-like crypt has a shrine to the postman's trusty wheelbarrow, taken on his many trips for materials. The Facteur Cheval's poems appear on concrete slabs placed on the exterior walls, encrusted with stones and abstract rock shapes. Three enormous figures dominate: Caesar, Vercingetorix, and Archimedes, their scale contrasting the intricate architectural details. The structure took 33 years to complete. In the last few years of his life, Cheval built a second monument, an extraordinary tomb for himself in the local cemetery. Okay. Vercingetorix. Restarting the device.
Gatherings.
S.P. Dinsmore. In Kansas, the Garden of Eden was created by Samuel Perry Dinsmore, 1843 to 1932, a veteran of the American Civil War. Originally born in Ohio, Dinsmore returned to his home state after the war, joined a Masonic lodge, and became interested in free thought philosophy. After various careers in and around the Midwest, Dinsmore officially retired in 1905 and moved into the city of Lucas, Kansas. The last years of his life were intensely creative. Using his own construction techniques, he created his cabin home and Garden of Eden to illustrate his religious and radical political ideas. He made a series of interconnected concrete trees and branches supporting over 157 figures, including a tableau he created called the Crucifixion of Labor. Cain and Abel, angels, storks, and a concrete American flag. But Dismore's later life, he married a girl almost 60 years younger than himself and became a father again. Dinsmore lies a glass coffin in a mausoleum he constructed for himself in his garden. Columbus, Georgia. All right, Eddie Owens Martin, 1908 1986, known as Saint EOM, created Pasquan in Georgia, a colorful monument to his own personal faith. Martin had returned to Georgia in the 1950s after a period spent in New York, where he explored the city's art galleries and museums, suffered depression, and experienced several hallucinatory episodes. After inheriting his mother's home, he settled in Georgia permanently and began to transform the 4-acre site. The main building and the imposing sculpted and painted walls that ring the compound are decorated with cosmic images, mandalas, and symbols from Eastern religions. The huge vivid figures on the site represent the mystical occupants of the land of Pasquan. Saint Eom lived by telling fortunes dressed in the elaborately colorful robes of the high priest of Pasquan. He worked on his personal temple until he committed suicide, taking his own life with a single bullet to the environment. The environment has since been open to the public and is maintained by the Marion County Historical Society. Wisconsin. In 1983, salvage worker Tomo Every passed his demolition business on to his son, began to call himself Dr. Evermore, and started on the task of creating for Revertron, a huge construction designed to travel in space. The visionary piece of sculpture made from scrap metal, machine parts from breweries, paper mills, engineering factories, and even an Apollo decontamination chamber weighs 300 tons and is 15 meters high by 35 meters wide. One section includes a spiral staircase and a wrought iron gazebo. On the summit of the vast assemblage sits a copper egg housing a glass ball, waiting to shoot Dr. Evermore into space once it has been activated by a magnetic lightning beam. Around the structure sit various other constructions and animal figures, including a 46-member bird band made from brass bed posts, old tools, gasoline nozzles, and a full complement of musical instruments. An enormous tubular telescope has been constructed from scrap by Every, who hopes to be able to fulfill his dream of space travel. Howard Finster, Georgia. The Reverend Howard Finster built his Paradise Garden in Somerville, Georgia, as a testament to his own religious faith. The evangelical preacher originally constructed a garden at Creon, Georgia, where he created several miniature buildings and a personal museum, which he hoped to fill with examples of inventions, proof he believed of God's love of humanity. In 1961, he moved to Somerville and began to work on a second, much larger garden constructed on 4 acres of vacant his repair shop. Finster made several buildings from waste materials, including his world's folk art, constructed from bottles, parts of bicycles, mirrors, and other found objects. Eventually, the garden was crammed with outhouses, concrete walkways, a tower made from old bicycles, a giant shoe, and other sculptures. Together with signs proclaiming his own idiosyncratic religious beliefs, Finster made thousands of paintings combining biblical texts with other imagery, and achieved fame during his lifetime as America's most celebrated folk artist. Hey, Howard Finster. Adolphe Julien Fauré. The country priest Adolphe Julien Fauré started to chisel figures into the granite coastline at Rodinef, Brittany, following an illness which left him partially paralyzed, unable to speak or hear. He was forced to resign his church position and over a period of 25 years devoted himself to his creative work. More than 300 sculptures were produced, spreading across an area of 600 square meters. Some of the carvings are freestanding, others follow the natural contours of the shore. The sculptures narrate the daring exploits of the Rothenoffs, a notorious family of local pirates, as well as devotional scenes, sea monsters, and other tableaux. Fourier also carved in wood, making sculptures of birds, animals, figures, and totems, a collection he exhibited in a small space known as the Diabolic Gallery. The gallery was burnt down during bombing in the Second World War, and only a handful of the wooden sculptures housed in the gallery survived. But Fourier's coastline rock carvings are still strongly in evidence. Raymond Isidore. La Maison Picanciette, created by Raymond Isidore, a sweeper at the Saint Chardon Cemetery, is a classic example of how a simple creative urge can develop into a grand, visionary environment. Having built a house for his wife and stepchildren, Isidore started collections of broken china, glass, and crockery, and began making simple mosaics around the house. This hobby became progressively more serious. And in 1956, when Isidore retired from his unfulfilling job, he devoted himself wholly to his obsession. He now worked continuously, eventually covering the interior outside walls of the garden. He included themes of femininity, death, religion, and the famous cathedral of his hometown of Chartres. His flowing, highly ordered images covered everything from Madame Isidore's sewing machine to chairs, beds, and tables. Isidore went on to build a courtyard complex around the back of the house, including a tiny chapel, freestanding sculptures, and depictions of Jerusalem and Chartres, and relief mosaic. He died just 2 years after completing his project. Oh, super intricate. There. I did want to include the place that had the yeah, poet environments to go to, and I could just make a list of the different visionary environments. Just suggest going to two. I could talk about all the ones in the United States, even though I don't think. Just make a list of them, say go to at least two and just compare some similar qualities. Um, and then encourage any artists that you know to work on their project and share a little bit about these people. Or because this book is very supportive of all types of artists, especially those, more so than other books and spaces supportive of those with mental illness. Might go with the right being, encouraging those in mental health facilities to participate in art, which is already a big thing. I'm sure I can find a place that does that, or some kind of a program that would offer something like that. So I think the itinerary is pretty much done. I just want to read a couple more of these. So Daniel, Jackie. Oh, yeah. Did I talk about Women on Wednesday? I did. I sure did, because we talked about ophthalmology. Okay. A stall holder at local junk markets, Danielle Jackie's first. Wait, this is in France. Okay. South France. First creative work was a large and vividly colored piece of embroidery. This took her over a year to finish and marked her style of densely packed forms and vibrant colors from the outset. She progressed to paintings, becoming a leading member of the Artists Singulaires group of self-taught artists in Provence, but continues to produce her three-dimensional embroidered figures and objects. Jackie's powerful creative drive extends into her home, and the entire house has been transformed into a living artwork. The walls, ceilings, and staircase are covered in paintings and reliefs with beautifully calligraphed, 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 calligraphed words and letters. Mosaic has also played an important role. Both the interior and exterior are bombarded with colorful pieces of glass and china, building up an overpowering texture. The brightly painted exterior wall includes some of Jackie's paintings as the ever evolving house merges into a single entity. Wow. Another place in France. All right, Mexico. Edward James, Las Posas. This large-scale flowing construction set in the remote Mexican jungle was devised by the eccentric English aristocrat Edward James. A poet and patron of surrealist artists, James fell in love with this isolated area in 1945 on a trip to Xilitla. By 1962, James was able to begin constructing a magical surreal palace on 2,500 acres of land he had purchased. Using up to 60 local laborers, James worked from dawn to dusk, obsessively directing his complex and changing plans. Flowing forms were created by local carpenters and masons who would mold the colored concrete around the curved wooden slats. The enormous nature-inspired columns resembled giant plants. Stairways lead nowhere. Pools, fountains, and arcades link parts of the site. The overall impression is of a temple from a long-lost civilization. Although James worked on the site from the late 1940s until the mid-1980s, this strong and organic construction was never completed, remaining a place of mystery and intrigue. Carl Junker, German. Carl Junker devoted his life to a single visionary project, constructing a heavily ornamented house at Limgau near Hanover in Germany. After studying architecture in Munich and a period spent in Italy on a traveling scholarship, Junker used some of the money he had received from an inheritance to build the house. He led a solitary life, living alone for 22 years, even though the house was designed for a non existent wife and family. In some ways reminiscent of the local Weser Renaissance building style, the Junker House is crammed with numerous nobbled images and carvings. Subtle love and religious themes appear throughout the house, and embracing figures carved alongside images of Christ. The brown of the wood-thin interior glows mysteriously, lit by the small windows. The exterior of the house is painted with pale blues, yellows, whites, and browns in strict geometric patterns. A local museum now maintains the house and stores many of Junker's artworks, including paintings, drawings, and sculptures. Reading about these. Allie! How many more are there? All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the study and the right and the book cover, and then I'll go back and look for the titles and the locations and finish everything up. Yeah, so vision. And I might close out a little early today just because I'm back here. Chances are we'll still finish at the end of the hour. All right, here's the book. Oops. Okay. Um, choose um, choose any number of visit and share how we are referred to as artists. Artists. Share how the artists' life story informed their artwork. Okay. And I could say their environment instead of their life stories. But the environment is included in their life story, I guess. All right. And then I need to figure out um, volunteer with the mentally ill, do artwork. All right, volunteering opportunities, external disclaimer. Please be noted that we do not have direct collaboration with these organizations. We promote these opportunities based on their relevancy to. All right, Flamenco Chick stands volunteer over the wall. Medical group volunteer. The community involves helping children and people with amazing cases. Community volunteers spending time previously. Another not mostly ill. Volunteer. Flexible volunteer. Uh, not ex- This is good. It's inspired by what we read today. It's not necessarily did with what we read from a particular chapter, but I think it's a pretty good connect, right? Those we provide students who are interested in both arts and mental health. And I think that if it's fine, the see events, paper making workshops, pages of full process of writing down your. Where is this? I'm gonna find something that's a better fit, but that might be really good for something else later. I'm going to save it here. Get better at taking these notes, but okay. Yeah, I guess we'll just do what I had originally set out to do, which is just encourage someone to do their use refer to someone's story and artwork in order to inspire someone else to do their own unique artwork. Right, and that's it. Except for no, it's not because we took the locations. Right, so there are a bunch of them. So let's it's over here and this over there. Again. And here we are, see? Okay, so I could do a France focus and a States focus, but I don't know. Which chapter is it? Where's this book? 2002 is not so old. Who is? Oh, borrow it again. Ew. All right. So there's what's the name? What? Or, rock garden in India. Ferdinand. It. So this means uh, right. I feel like this can go up higher. Whoops. Right, and then I'm just going to say, and many more. Okay, chapter visionary environments chapter. Go wherever you please. Go wherever you please. No problems. All right, and we're done. So have a very, very good one. We'll come back together next week and we'll be talking about Greek heritage. Have a great weekend and see you next time. Bye bye.